Hey guys, our guest today is Jack Straw. He's a former cop, a former businessman, a former federal inmate, and he's a novelist. He's a father and a grandfather. So Jack's a guy with an interesting story, and we're going to explore that today. So welcome to the Lead to the Left podcast, Jack. I appreciate you joining us.
Bob, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to this.
Now, tell me, you were a law enforcement officer in the Midwest as a young guy. You did pretty well because at the age of 26, they made you a captain. But then you did some stuff and you ended up in federal prison. Tell me about what happened.
Yeah, my law enforcement career had nothing to do with what put me in prison. I
Oh,
left.
that's encouraging.
Yeah, it is. If I had stayed there, I would not be doing podcasts and talking to you probably. I
Mm,
left that and went into business myself, and it was the insurance investment business. And like many people in that world, I got lost along the way there because like I said, I took some really stupid advice. I know it was stupid because it came directly from me, and I listened to it. And I stole money. They in the indictment said misappropriated, which, like I said, is another word for stole. And then
right.
why the feds got a hold of it is because little did I know when you move that money by using your computer, now you're using the internet, and then the feds come in.
Oh,
Very
so it
unpleasant
becomes a
experience.
federal crime.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
yeah. Yeah, it's anytime you use the internet for. In fact, there's a lot of guys in federal prison that people call them pedophiles. They've never abused a child because that's
Oh,
not a federal crime to abuse a child. But if you look at a naked child on the internet, they put them in prison for it. It's a very
oh,
strange thing. But there was a lot of those guys here. But anyway, that had nothing to do with me. But
right.
once I moved the money like that, then I was indicted for that.
Oh,
Guilty.
okay. Oh, so you ended up in prison. While in prison, you hung out with some pretty interesting characters, right?
Yeah, I was in three different institutions. The first one was La Tuna. It's a federal correctional institution right down on the Mexican border between Juarez and El Paso,
Okay.
out in the desert. And the guys there, that's where all the violent guys can be sent. There's a lot of drug guys there. One of the guys I used to hang out with, it was in George Jung, who was the subject of the movie Blow, and Johnny
Okay.
Depp played him. He was there. There was another guy that had a major motorcycle gangs and Aryan Brotherhood, all
Okay.
those guys, a lot of gangs
Hmm.
there and stuff.
Hmm.
Uh, the second two places I was sent to was one in Florence, Colorado, which was a camp. That's a little
Camp?
different. They call them a camp, and they really are a camp by the time you get done with being behind the fence because there's no fence at a camp. Where at Latune, there was huge fence, like 13 rows of razor wire, and it's infested by cockroaches. And the camp was nice compared to
Okay.
that. I wouldn't want
Okay.
to live there compared to where I live now,
Right.
but it's nice compared to Latuna.
Okay. All right. Tell me about what happened when you first got to prison. How were you treated? What's that like?
Going to prison, you don't just go to prison. When you get in the federal system, there's stages to it, and you spend a little time in the county jail till they find a spot for you. I was sent to Oklahoma City first, which is a classification center where they decide which place you're going to based on what you did. Supposedly, they already know
Okay.
where you're going. They know,
Okay.
and then they
Hmm.
ship you out to wherever you go. They strip you naked. About half the time you spend naked, getting checked out by guys, making sure you don't have contraband or coming into your little room and tearing stuff up and making sure you don't have any contraband there, which you don't have anything because they brought you in. It's a shocker to your system. I'll
Yeah,
guarantee you that.
man, I bet you it is. Was it scary?
Oh hell yeah!
Yeah.
You get there, you're not used to that environment at all. And first two when I was in 2 weeks in Oklahoma City, I had seven different cellmates, cellies they call them. And man, I had one guy, he was crazy. He was pounding on the walls. The next guy came in and he's bawling all night long. The guy came in, kept hacking up and he hockeyed half his lung into the sink at night.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. And now before that, you're home with your dog and cat
Uh-huh.
and your wife, or if you're married and the
Hmm.
neighbor. Now you go
Hmm.
from that scenario to the frightening scenario of federal court, which is the whole system in itself,
Yeah.
into this place. And you're not even staying there. Now they're going to
Hmm.
ship you someplace else.
Hmm.
So you've lost all control of everything. I always said you go there to have your status as a human being vacated,
Wow.
and that's basically it.
So you were married when this happened?
Yeah, I was married the first time. And my wife, we get along fine, but there's no future when you're going to prison staying married. I think guys that do that, they're just
Right.
torturing themselves.
Okay.
So she left and I left too, but she
Right.
left on her own.
Got
So,
it. Yeah. Did you have kids?
oh yeah, I have four daughters, all very successful people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they were, so you're remarried? You
Yeah, I'm
said you're,
remarried now.
yeah. Oh, okay. So you wrote three books while you were in prison, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Tell
I
me
wrote,
about them.
well, the first book I had no intentions of going to prison writing books. And I'll tell you the reason is when you get there, you need to do something. There's a lot of things going on in prison that if you get involved in, you're going to be there a lot longer.
Okay.
You,
What? What?
oh, there's a black market going on all the time. There's contraband brought in all the time. I just, you got it's a very corrupt system
Okay.
inside and outside. And
Okay.
so you got to be careful. And because one thing, if somebody gets in trouble in these places and they got to tell on somebody, they're going to tell on the first available person and they go after you.
Okay.
So just, you got to find something to do. You work out a lot. I lost about 60 pounds, worked out,
Ooh.
ran every day, but I got into writing because I was encouraged by a number of people. I wrote some little stupid little stories about different things we saw in prison that were because there's humor in prison. I don't want to go on about the violence and stuff in prison. It's always there. I hear about it. I listen to their podcasts. I saw the TV and all this yak yak. It's
Hmm.
not all violent. Most of it's totally ridiculous. So I got into writing thing, and I met a guy by the name of Doug Williams who was in prison because he was doing at war with the polygraph industry, the lie detector industry.
Okay.
And, and Doug was a polygraph operator one time, and he put people in prison with a polygraph, and he felt horrible about it. And he came to his senses, and he had this long story. One time he'd worked in the White House for Johnson and Nixon, and he was in law enforcement. Anyway, he saw what I wrote. He was trying to write a book about his life about doing this. He asked me to do it. I thought, okay, so I took that on and we wrote that. And when I was released, it was put out, did pretty well.
Okay.
And I just looked at Amazon. This still got 5-star rating stuff on Amazon, and
That's
I was
good.
pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
This and so to go to the second book I wrote after I got out, and it's kind of a weird thing. It's totally a comedy. It's just about the bizarre behavior of some people, all based on guys I knew in prison. What would happen if the president and the secretary of state had lost some very serious documents, but they're afraid to go to anybody in the government to do it because they're paranoid. So they get the president's backers out in the world to go find these. And so these strange characters go around searching for a kidnapped State Department courier with these secret documents. And it's all a comedy. The people who've read it think it's hilarious. It's just brain spillings of mine. But the
Okay.
characters are based on prison characters, and the story is based on the world today, basically, the United States.
Okay. What are the names of those books?
First book is called False Confessions.
Okay.
And it really is because there's in the polygraph, there's a lot of confessions that are completely false. And the people confess because they were told the polygraph has got you, you lied, and they end up confessing. And the second one's called Codename Eclectics. And that name came because every character in it is totally different and weird. And that's why I came up with that there.
Okay. Now, the polygraph book, you said that there's a lot of corruption involved with that, or I guess either that or it's just mistakes or what? What is it?
It's both. If someone takes a polygraph, really it's you're at the whim of the operator.
Okay.
And now I'm not going to sit here and tell you all polygraph operators are corrupt. I don't believe that. But it's a corruptible machine, and it's not all the results are subjective, not objective, and that's the problem. And it can be used to beat people over the head with. When I was in law enforcement, we used it. And I was there present when they said, it looks like he might be lying, but we're going to tell him he's lying. And we'd go in and we'd pound this guy, the polygraph has got you. You might as well forget it. And eventually people would say, I guess I'm screwed. What they don't know is it's not even admissible in court.
You
Uh,
mean to tell me that people will, because of that, they'll confess to something they didn't do?
oh, absolutely. There's been a lot of false confessions, even without the polygraph in law enforcement, let alone
Mhm.
that. And I'm not picking on law enforcement. I'm just saying that's a reality that happens. And
Why
when
does it
I mean,
happen?
why does it happen?
Yeah.
People are intimidated. A lot of times you're dealing with people who confess that are, I don't want to say people are dumb, but maybe their intellect isn't real strong. They don't have any support. They
Okay.
don't realize they mentioned the word attorney. It's all over what they could get an attorney, but
Yeah.
they don't because they think there's a strange thought process in the world that if I tell them I want an attorney, oh, that looks like I'm guilty.
Right.
No, if you don't tell me you want an attorney, it looks like you're stupid. You
Uh-huh.
know? And so, no, a lot of people do confess to that. Doug
Wow.
had circumstances that he faced, but no, the answer to that question is yeah, people do.
Okay. All right. So Doug Williams, that's not the Doug Williams that was the quarterback of the NFL, right?
No, this Doug was a lot shorter.
Okay. All right. So tell me about you wrote a kid's book.
Yeah, I did.
Tell me
Uh,
about that. Why'd you do
but
that?
how or why?
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 Yeah.
Because I'm really immature. And I'd always liked kid stories, and
Uh,
my daughters always liked when they were little, and I always liked rhythm and rhyme when I was little, and I
yeah.
used to write a lot of rhyming things in school, and the teachers get a hold of it, and the principal
Uh,
asked me to stay later. He liked it so much, that kind of
yeah.
stuff. But no, I thought I liked that. I'm going to do another one. It's a Christmas story. It's based on this. Actually, this happened in prison as well. There was a correctional officer who told me his daughter had been told in school there could be no Santa Claus because it doesn't make sense. Because how could one guy understand all the languages of all the kids in the world? And that's impossible. So I wrote the story rather. It's called North Polese, and it's a
Okay.
children's secret language that Santa Claus that goes around the earth when the kids are first born, whispers it to their ear, and they know it immediately. He can talk to all the children. But it
Uh,
fades when you get older, and adults don't understand it. That's why they don't
okay.
believe it. So
Okay.
anyway,
That's cool. Where'd you get the idea for that? Oh, from your grandkids.
yeah, I just said, how can you do that? How can one guy know all that? And
Yeah.
to me, I thought
Okay.
that's like a
All
little
right.
thing. You get an
Well,
idea.
I went on Amazon looking for it and I couldn't find it. They kept,
North, yeah, North Police is not on there now, and
oh,
putting it back on. It was on there 4 or 5 years ago. We just didn't market it again. We sold it. Actually, I gave a bunch of them away.
uh,
We had battered women's shelter. I'm going to some of the places I send them out to, and
sure,
so that book I'm giving away because I don't know. I just think it's a good little story for kids, maybe living a little stress or something like that. There, I had kind of a
sure.
stressful childhood, and I think that something like that would help a kid.
That's nice. That's nice. You've got another prison book you're working on?
Yeah, I'm working on actually. It is a story of the prison system. Is my walk through the system right now, starting with Latuna and going through the camps, and but it's not. Again, it's not a story about all the violence, any weird stuff like that's pretty much left out of it. That
Yeah.
gets covered all the time.
Uh,
This is let people know what your money's being spent on. It's some of this stuff is so stupid you can't even believe it.
like
And
what?
I'll give you an example. I was in Florence, Colorado at the camp. A guy came into the camp, and now to get remember, I'm gonna clarify. I'm gonna quantify this. When you're in Latuna, the inmates there are different things. Like you've got some cartel lower level guys there. You've got the bikers there. You got the drug dealers. You got you got bank robbers, real criminals. These guys are criminals. They
Right.
study how to commit crimes when they get out. Now, when you get to the camp, you got lawyers and doctors and Congress. Half of the state politicians in New Mexico were in there.
Oh,
You got
really?
oh God, there was all tons of them all over the place. But there was
Okay.
you got guys who did anything, white collar guys from business and that kind. So it's a different group altogether.
Sure.
And so there's no fence around it. And there's anything you can get out in the world, you can get in a camp. You're not supposed to, but you
Right.
can. Anyway, this kind of shows you how dumb things are, how costly it can be. We had a guy come into the camp, and he came I was the education clerk, and he came walking. This guy has literally no body hair and on his head. He's got these little welts all over him, like bleeding. And there's a guy who was in there with me, looked at him. This guy was a doctor, says, "Man, you got scabies." And this guy says, "Yeah, I know." He says, "What are you doing walking around?" He goes, "Medical won't do anything about it here." They said, I don't have them. He goes, "You got scabies." So they took him up to the medical people, the actual doctors who work for the Bureau of Prisons, and they said, "That's not scabies. He's having an allergic reaction to the change in barometric pressure."
Right.
Yeah, I know. And that's exactly what happened. Within about 3 weeks of the 400 some people at Florence camp, none of whom had scabies prior to that, about half of them had scabies
What is
after.
that? What is that,
Scabies
Stevie's?
is a little tiny insect thing that infects your skin, and
Uh,
it's like a little mite, and it's very contagious. It
oh,
goes from one person to another, and you get welts and all over you. It's
oh,
frightening
wow.
stuff.
Wow.
So instead of putting this guy in medical care and for a couple $100 taking care of it, it cost him thousands and thousands. Had to get rid of the bedding out of the camp, and you had
Oh
to
my
turn everybody
God.
with shots and stuff. And the camp administrator who was there, this guy couldn't work at a Walmart. It was embarrassing. And he
Uh-huh.
just blew the whole thing, and no big deal. It
Were
just
there
done.
any scary incidents that occurred that for you?
Oh yeah, you had guys in Latuna, especially there was some major one guy got beat up with a bat during a softball game and things like that. And
Yeah.
actually they had a riot in Florence, Colorado in the camp of all things because the Bureau of Prisons had sent by accident some guys who actually were never supposed to be assigned to a camp because they had violence and stuff, and they sent them into a camp, and that started a riot in a camp of all things. And if you've ever
Mhm.
been in prison, you understand why I say of all things, because the camp is it's a sissy place compared to other ones, I guess you'd say.
A sissy place compared to a regular prison. Is that what you're
Yeah, oh
saying?
yeah. It's
Yeah.
just it's different. There's classes there. If you ever look at Florence, Colorado, it's actually the flagship prison system for the United States. You have the underground supermax, and then the administrative max, and you have the maximum security prison, and then you have the medium, and then you have the camp.
Okay.
And the camp, actually, these guys go all over and take care of the other places and stuff when they don't mix and mingle with the other inmates.
Okay. Underground super camp.
It's called the administrative max. Basically it's a half underground prison. I was the chief education clerk there, and
What did that mean? What did you do?
I never met any of the inmates there because we were separated because I was a low security guy. But the guys in there are Unabomber. Ted Kaczynski was in there.
Wow.
Uh, and they had guys who were head of different, like Aryan Brotherhood. There was the Boston Bomber came in just as after I'd left. He was
Yeah.
out, young kid. And usually, if you go in there, you're never coming out.
Yeah.
That's the end. But what I would do there, my job was these guys would order, some guys could actually order books from the library. Some could get pens and papers. My job was to make sure all the supplies were sent down with the correctional officers to hand out to them and stuff and like that. So it's quite the facility. You ever walk in that place, you think you're in the Addams family house. Boy, it's creepy.
Wow. I bet. All right. Okay. What's next for you?
Life,
Yeah.
living out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm working on this other book. I actually work at the local hospital as well.
Okay.
And I don't know, I just enjoy things. I like to write. I like to hang out. I'm not unhappy. I
Mhm.
don't have a lot of guys get out. And I was very fortunate. My family was very supportive.
Good.
A lot of guys, when they get out, they got nothing because they
Hmm.
don't have a supportive family. And so they have
Right.
to scramble around, look for a job and stuff. And I
Right.
wish it the best sometimes on
Hmm.
that.
So you told me that before we started, you told me that you'd been married and had four daughters. And then while you were in prison, that marriage ended, but now you've remarried. And so I guess life is good.
Yeah, my wife yeah, it is. My wife is 24 years younger than I am. In
Okay.
fact, I have two daughters older than her.
Oh,
Yeah,
cool.
actually, her dad jokingly calls me son, and I'm 2 years older than him. But it works out fine. Everybody's happy. And to think of it, we live in Iowa. We don't live in Los Angeles or something where people would maybe thinking of it. But at here they do.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
no, life is good. I see people get depressed and hung up on things, and I've seen things to be depressed about, and I can tell you about what true loneliness is and hopelessness is. And this ain't it. This is good, you know. And so that I can't.
Loneliness and hopelessness. Did you experience that when you were in prison?
When you first go in, you absolutely do. My
Mhm.
plan literally was when you get sentenced and you hear the judge tell you, and I didn't even hear that. I think the judge was saying he's comatose, but I knew I was going to get probably 10, 15 years. So you look at 10 or 15 years, and that's pretty much the end of your life. That's how you look at it. But
Yeah.
that's my personal thought.
How old were you when this went down?
And it's in my 50s. I got out in 2000. I haven't been out that long. It's just 5 years right now. So
Okay.
So you look at that and you think of the life you had at that point. I was a pretty popular guy, and there was big news around here. And boy, they hammer you in the media and stuff. And then, so at that point, you think this might be it. So I contemplated suicide. I was right to the point. I was right at the railroad tracks waiting for the train. And,
Wow.
but my father committed suicide many years ago. He hadn't committed a crime or anything like that. He had some issues, and no one really knows what they were. And I remember the impact it had on our entire family. And it was amazingly devastating. And I couldn't do it like that. So my plan and all my brilliant thinking was I'll just go to prison. When I get down there, when they send me there, I'll get in a fight with a couple of big guys and they'll do it for me and it won't be like a suicide.
Okay.
Clear thinking, right? I get down there and that didn't work out because I can defend myself. And I realized at that point, I don't think this dying thing is really
Yes.
worth
Sounds like a good idea,
it.
right?
'Cause I'm not really sure what happens afterwards. Is there something afterwards? And if there
Right.
isn't, I'm kind of screwing myself. So I had to make the best of it while I was there. And I did. I did. And I don't want people to think I had a great time there. But for being in prison, I didn't have a bad time. You know,
Okay.
saw a
All
lot of
right.
interesting things. As a cop and in prison, I've seen two sides and things that I never ever thought I'd see. Met people I never thought I'd meet.
Yeah. You were a cop and then you ended up being a inmate in federal prison. Did other inmates knowing you had been a cop, did that cause you a problem?
That's an excellent question. No one's asked me. It's a strange thing. When you go into federal prison, the first thing that happens when you get into the prison itself, the other inmates want to see your paperwork, and it's your adjudication, and it tells you what the crime is. Because if you're what they call a chomo, which is like a child molester, you saw naked kids on the internet, they're probably going to work you over. And they're going to tell you to go set the rest of the chomos. Don't eat with us. You got certain tables you got to set up. There's very strict rules in prison.
Wow.
But there's nothing on mine about law enforcement. They never include that on there. And so no one knew anything about that. And I didn't bring
Okay.
it up
Okay.
for a long time until
Sure.
a correctional officer let it out on the compound. By that time, I was already established as a pretty straight guy, regular inmate. Nobody cared at that point.
Okay.
One guy down there who was a cop from out west tried to get in with these guys and be buddy. He didn't tell them, and they found out, and it wasn't too good for him. But he asked for that. That's one of the rules there.
What happened to him?
He worked his ass over, French. That's the only way to put it. But yeah, but he got in with the wrong guys, and he was dumb on his part. You can't do that,
Yeah.
and it is a very violent place. It can be, but it's a funny thing is out here, rules don't seem to apply a lot of the
Mhm.
times. In
Mhm.
prison, behind the fence in prison, oh, they
Mhm.
apply. You
Mhm.
better believe they apply.
Mhm. When you say rules don't seem to apply out here, what do you mean by that?
You can look at anywhere from politicians down to law enforcement to people you meet on the street, they're not believable. They'll steal stuff from each other now, petty things, call each other names, the kind of stuff, and it's okay, whether you're in politics or just whatever it is. There's no in prison, there's a big thing, and it's a respect thing. You have to respect that other person, and if you don't, there's culpability.
Okay.
You find out. Out here, there's not like that. And
Mhm.
it's not to say prison's right, but if you know how those laws are defined and you follow them, you'll be okay. You got to know it. Don't step it. There's certain, like if you're there and if you're a Sereno, those are the Sereno tables. You eat at those tables there. The Serenos have the weight pile at a certain time. You go in there. If you're a Paisa, don't go to the Sereno table and don't go in the weight pile while the Serenos are in there working out.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, what's a Sereno and what's the other one?
Paisa.
What's what?
Different Mexican groups.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I should explain that as far as say because I forget sometimes everybody hasn't been there.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So basically what it is your group. If you belong to a group, then you
Yeah.
travel with that. They call it your car. You stay with your car,
Okay.
and don't wander outside that. And don't you can talk and socialize other ones. Don't break any of the rules because you answer to it. So that's pretty much it.
Why is it that it's called a bid?
No one seems to know that I ever talked to, but I think it's just one of them, like people will say, how long did you get? Well, I did a dime. That's 10 years.
Right.
And they
Right.
always say that. So I don't really know what the deal in the bid is either. You can stump me on that one. You stump the band.
Yeah, I'm just curious because lots of times people say I did a 20-year bid or a 15-year bid or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, did you bid? How much did you pay for that?
I thought the day I got sentenced, it was a bidding war because I had signed a plea agreement for 10 years.
Oh,
Just before we go in, the prosecutor decides he's going to ask for 12 years. The judge decides she's going to give me 15. I said, whoa, don't ask the bailiff. My God, I'll be doing life if we keep
yeah.
going here. I
Oh.
can't answer that. They always say
So
bid
you ended up doing 10 years, right?
10 years.
Yeah. And you didn't have to do the last five. Why?
What happened was they passed the First Step Act, which went into effect, and in there they had some things about if you take your classes, do all this stuff here, you get some time. They also had a thing called the Elderly Offender Act. And that was if by that time, if you were 60 years old and older, you'd done at the point you'd done 10 years and be 60 years old, you can qualify to go to home confinement with an ankle monitor and stay there. And that's why I qualified there.
This has been really interesting. You got anything else you'd like to share?
No, I just enjoy talking to you. And like I said, if people have any questions, I got my website, they can go there. They want to ask me a question, email or something.
Your website is what?
It's jacks-lrc.com.
Okay. I'll put that in the description for you guys that are listening and watching. And there'll also be some links that I'll put in there for his books, so that if you're interested, you can just click on those links and pick up his books. Yeah. And all right, that's all I have. I hope that things go well for you, my friend. And I thank you for coming on the podcast with me. Hey guys, I'm Bob Gatty, founder and host of Lean to the Left. I'm excited to share our new book, Hijack Nation, Donald Trump's Attack on America's Greatness, co-authored with political analyst and professor C.J. Waldron. In Hijack Nation, we delve into the unfolding story of America's political landscape through a series of essays from leantotheleft.net. We explore how Donald Trump's presidency has transformed American politics, challenging our values and institutions. Through rigorous analysis and passionate storytelling, we shed light on the implications for our democracy.
I'm C.J. Waldron, and alongside Bob, we dissect the events that have led us to this pivotal moment in history. Each essay captures the urgency of our times and encourages readers to engage critically with the issues at hand.
Hijack Nation isn't just a book, it's a call to action. It invites you to reflect on what it means to be American in a divided political landscape. Together we can reclaim our nation's greatness.
So please join us in this important conversation. Whether you're a seasoned political junkie, just starting to explore the issues, our essays offer valuable insights and thought-provoking discussions.
So get your copy of Hijack Nation today. Visit leantotheleft.net and click on the Books tab to learn more and to order. Together we can navigate the challenges ahead. Thanks so much for your support.